Just call me Swa.
Swat. Okay, that's cool. Cool.
Thank you. Welcome to Oh yeah. By the way, do you mind if this goes on YouTube?
I know you. I know you're going to put it on there anyway.
Well,
Go
no,
for it,
I
man.
won't. If I don't
No,
get,
go.
if I don't
That's
get,
good. You ask. It's good. It's good. You ask. I appreciate it. But no, go for it. I mean, you'll be surprised with this conversation or where it goes. Seriously.
yeah. Before,
More close to we are than what that message was all about.
yeah, my entire life is about that message. So let's get to it. Before we
Let's go
start,
for it.
I like to I would like to know your definition of racism.
My
And
definition. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. My definition of racism is any type of prejudice against any color where that person isn't equal to yourself, basically, essentially. So in a very, very brief, short term.
So, do you think all people can be racist?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Uh, See, I'm going to tell you my definition of
Sure.
racism, and I want to know if you agree or disagree. I'm going to tell you right now, I disagree with your definition of racism.
That's
My
okay. That's cool.
definition of racism is a group of people who classify themselves as white, who are dedicated to subjugating everyone in the known universe who they do not classify as white. And that's the same definition I use for white supremacy. They're like synonyms, they're the same thing. I'm, I'm guessing you're going to disagree with the definition of racism.
No. See, I wouldn't disagree with that, but then I would then say, well, surely then that definition applies to all colours and all races.
No, but see, we would, without racism, white supremacy, we would have no races. The only
Yeah,
reason
no,
we have the human race, I mean, like the only reason we have races is so that we are able to distinguish who we need to be subjugating, who we need to be controlling. Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, absolutely.
So
So,
like, mhm.
so sorry to interrupt. So flipping it on its head. I mean, I've experienced three times in my life I've experienced racism. One of them was funny because it was from one of my own friends' mothers. And I understand, and I kind of understand where she's coming from. She's originally from Ghana.
Okay. So they're black people.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, absolutely. That's what I say. You should look at my profile. You'd be
Okay.
surprised who I know, who my friends are, and my background, and so. But anyway, and I understood because she was more concerned that he may have got undue attention living with a white person.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite rare in England
Mm-hmm.
that people would say that. But I accepted that. I respected her for that, and I understood. And we used to go to university together in London, so we hung out all the time. We go out raving, blah 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 blah. The other two times was in Thailand, where my ex-wife's from, and my children are half Thai. Okay, and they sheerly didn't like me because of my colour. They'd have had a bad experience, and because I'm a 6'3" guy, and to me, I just found it funny. I didn't find it offensive, but I can understand how some people would absolutely find it offensive in the wrong situation. Me, I can just laugh that kind of thing off because, again, that may well come back to me being white, because I've never had that direct threat to me. So I looked at it in a more of a comedic manner. But then that might be my background, my personality, because I am a very light-hearted individual, and I mean, when you called me earlier on a white supremacist, I mean, it made me laugh because I kind of knew what you meant, but I knew who I was as well.
Yeah, like, do you think that you practice white supremacy by any chance? Do you think that?
To be honest, I mean, I like to think I don't, but if you told me otherwise, it would probably surprise me or shock me because I feel I wouldn't be like that. But there is an indoctrination within the white race in both UK and America.
Okay,
and
so
we are blind, and we are blinded by that, and I accept that. So I don't have an issue with that at all. But I like to think my good nature and my Catholic heart and the way I look at things as well.
like,
I shouldn't look at it that way, and I know that. I get
but Peter, you have to understand that I understand that not all white people are racist white supremacists. I'm very much aware of that.
Sure.
So I'm just, we're just having a conversation, a discussion. And so you would agree with my definition that racism, white supremacy is the subjugation of all non-white people on the globe?
Let
Or
me
when I
just think of
say
the word.
subjugation, I
Uh,
mean in all corners of the world, we can point to people who are not white
I think because
suffering.
when I've been reading about this, I mean, like you say, this wouldn't have started the way it did if it did.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'm just thinking about the words you said, and I would agree with that statement absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, and so so that's that. You are a white person. You're a white person, and you're admitting that white supremacy is very real. All right, is that
Oh
correct?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I have another definition of racism, white supremacy. Like the first one, it's like the baby version. It's a baby. But as
It,
for how the system goes, how the system works, it's a very long definition. So I'm gonna send it in the text. I mean, in the text
oh, okay,
portion, and I want
okay,
you to
go for
read it, and I want you to see if you agree with the expanded version of the definition.
it. Okay, no worries.
Okay, let me get the definition for you. So you say you're in Australia?
No, England.
Oh, England. I have a brother.
Do you know what? So many people say that my accent sounds like it's from Australia, and I mean, I live in Essex. I'm east of London, basically. So
Oh,
you know,
I
very multicultural area, very diverse. It's a lovely, it's not the nicest place actually to look at because there's a, the landscape is not a beautiful scene necessarily, but it's kind of more industrial. But we're right on the River Thames that goes into London, and yeah.
yeah, I was in London last October, kind
But where
of.
did you go? Where did you visit?
Um, I really can't recall, but I was down. I was down visiting because I have a twin brother who goes to the film school, London Film School.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I was in a documentary about twins.
Oh,
So
cool. So has he released that?
oh yeah, it's on his website. If people, I'll send you the link if you're interested
Yeah,
in
ping me
watching
the
it.
link. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right, let me
Uh,
read. Okay, let me read this.
mhm.
Sorry. Okay, it's come through now. That's my premises. Is it? Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the problem now, isn't it? It's so ingrained in our society, we
Yeah,
don't
and
even
yeah,
know. It's like living in the Matrix, isn't it, in a way?
yeah, yeah, and I must admit, it's very refreshing to like hear a white person like see the information and like understand that this is not like directly one white person's problem, but it is a huge, it's a global problem. This is like
Absolutely. Yeah,
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 I don't
yeah.
think we're gonna be able to solve any of our poverty, climate change, any problem, no problem on this planet will be solved until we replace this system with a system of
I
justice.
agree. Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. And again, there's other, well, fundamentally run by white men. Whether
Yeah.
it be the Rothschild, or it be whatever. It's so. I did say to you, you'd be surprised with how this conversation was going to go.
No, I don't. I don't. Like, I'm very constructive. I didn't come into the conversation
Same.
assuming that you're
Absolutely.
going to be like a this is not my this is my first time doing like a voice conversation, but I have like
Oh, good.
I type to people and like I my most recent conversation was with a white man from America who told me that the black race, black men are. He told me that he's afraid to walk down certain neighborhoods with his wife because he thinks that black
That's
men
his story.
are gonna rape his wife or something. Which
But
is like
that's his stereotype, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
his
yeah,
own.
yeah, yeah.
That's his own.
That's like how ingrained, as you said, racism, white supremacy is in our minds
Yeah,
and everything that we do. Like all 9 areas of activity.
yeah.
And definition has it.
And I
So
think, and I think, and I think that's kind of where I think the UK are going. I mean, you know, unfortunately, both our governments are very divisive. Yours, sadly, more than ours when it comes to this topic. And I follow the guys. I watch a lot of the. I wouldn't say I'm left wing. I'm certainly not right wing, but I'm a very liberal person, and so I watch CNN stuff. The Fox News network just makes me laugh at the ludicrous way they look at the world. But yeah, I do follow Alexandra Ocasio Costa as well in was it the 14th precinct in New York and all that sort of stuff. So it does keep me in touch as to what's going on out in the States, and it makes me then reflect and look at what's going on in the UK. And we are changing as well. We're with Boris Johnson, and I'm not comfortable with it at all, because he is what he is, and what I call him, a mini Trump at the end of the day. And he is divisive, and he does he calls Muslim women letterboxes, and
yeah. Would you describe Boris Johnson as a white supremacist?
Oh yeah, I would, absolutely. For his background, his Eton background, the way he's been brought up, the way he looks at the world, he ain't interested in what we're doing. He's interested in his men, in his buddies, in losing business and what he can get out of it. But again, we've got very little options over here. I mean,
well, see, that's the I feel like that's the deceit and confusion that white supremacists have like set and like have given our society. We don't envision a world without white supremacy. We don't envision a world where like there's true justice, where no one is allowed to be mistreated, and the people who need the most help receive the most help. We don't envision that world because it's been made a fantasy, but we actually do live in a fantasy where people think the world is not so much of a bad place. But if you understand what's going on throughout the globe, everywhere, there's suffering everywhere of all people. But the suffering is mostly concentrated in people who are not white.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So as a white person, what would you say that you do to come up with ways to replace the system or fight the system, if you do,
So again, so how would I change the system?
No, like in your day-to-day life, do you practice fighting racism, white supremacy, or is that something that you particularly think about?
It's strange, really. With COVID-19 and that, at the moment our lives have kind of changed. So we're a lot more, I wouldn't say locked down here in the UK, but we're still keeping distance from people we may well normally talk. So we're in our own little bubbles. I mean, my partner is kind of Chinese Indonesian. Well, she is Chinese Indonesian, and so my two children are half Thai. She's got 3 children. They're all older teenagers now. They're Hong Kongese and Indonesian. So I'm kind of the white guy in and amongst a larger minority, which is great. I love it. That's why I've always. I mean, you look around my house, you think it was an Oriental house. I've got a bit of black culture here as well. I've got a whole mixture of everything. I've got a whole Buddhist set over there. Even I'm Catholic. That's for my kids. So it's not until I actually step out of my little world and go outside that I start to recognise the problem a lot more. And it does frustrate me, because I don't understand how people can be so polite, and it is casual racism now, and it's kind of acceptable racism. And I don't think personally, and I think it seems like it's getting worse, but I'm always been a big believer. It's a bit like paedophiles, okay? There's always a high profile thing about paedophiles, and I always remind people in this country that we had two of the worst paedophiles in this country back in the 1960s, which were Myra Hindley and Ian Brady up in Yorkshire, near Leeds and Manchester areas. But I think we're just better at reporting it now, which is a wonderful thing, because we can do some more about it. So I do believe it's always been there. I don't necessarily believe it's getting worse, but I think that might be my white perspective of it. I don't probably get half the shit you get with just jumping in your car and driving down the road to buy something for your kid.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So but that's not necessarily to say I don't care and I don't understand. And I know that's not what you're saying. It's just that different perspective, and sometimes it's useful to have these discussions, because it does remind me, and it does make me angry, but it makes me want to be more proactive and challenge the norm, because it ain't right. It isn't right,
and that's why I
don't feel comfortable in the world. I don't feel comfortable. I feel comfortable in my Asian world, or with, like, say, my mate down in London,
Would you say that's because, like, a lot of the white people that you have to interact with maybe racist, white supremacists? We're having a little lag issues. Yeah, right here. Peter, something may have happened.
Generally London, as you've seen, the white and black people mix quite freely.
Wait. It froze for a long time.
Sorry.
Can you restart your answer, please?
Yeah, so talking about it was my mother I was saying. So I leave my work van outside my mother's house, and I was
Mhm.
talking to a neighbour the other day.
Wait, turn your camera off or turn it back on. That may fix the lag.
About the salary whilst the
Wait, wait,
COVID-19.
either turn your camera off or turn it back on because it's lagging a lot.
Oh, okay, but bear with me.
Mhm. Hope that fixes it. I don't know. We were doing so good with quality.
I guess it's not even hard.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. um, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
How about that? Is that better?
Okay, so let me just like re-ask the question again so we're on the same page.
Go for it, yeah.
And would you say that you're more comfortable around your non-white family because the white people you interact with are racist, white supremacists?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I feel uncomfortable because I've grown up in that world. But what I
Oh yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah, because it's going to be different from your perspective, being a black man. But it would be perhaps uncomfortable, and it should be. Not, I don't mean that in a negative way, but it should be because that highlights what the problem is. So, but I mean, I deal with it. That's the thing. I don't let people slide, and like I said about my mum's, I think the casual racism seems acceptable for some people and a lot of people in this country. I'm sure in America as well.
Can you describe examples of what you're describing as casual
Yeah.
racism?
Well, like for example, so I was talking to my mother's neighbour the other day, and he was talking about how Chancellor had done the Exchequer, who had obviously pumped loads of money and freed loads of money up for to combat COVID-19 and education and so on and so forth. And he referred to him. He said, "Oh, the Chancellor. Oh, that guy," and he called him the P word, a packy.
Because he's a brown person.
Yeah, because
Okay.
he classified him as a Pakistani, which his descendants are. He's born in this country, but that's irrelevant. It's still a racial negative,
Yeah.
racial connotation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But for him that's okay because he's comfortable because I'm a white guy. So he's relaxed. So he's comfortable to say that to me, not knowing my background, not knowing who my kids are, my family are. So that's a very good example where people just assume because you're engaging in them, they can relax and say what they want to say because you're the same color.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good example. That was only a few weeks ago.
And what casual racism did you experience from your mom growing up?
I mean, interestingly, my mum, she used to correct her mother and father a lot. She used to tell me, my mum was one of the ones who taught me and my father, and I'll tell you why my father in a second, always to treat people how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Now I focus on my father. My father was English, but he was born in Egypt, in Suez, where the canal is, in the Second World War, or just after. My grandmother was Italian. My grandfather worked in the military police for the British Army.
Mm.
And when they returned to the UK, they used to get a lot of, you could call it racism. They used to have bricks, stones thrown through their windows. He'd get bullied just because he was Italian.
Mm-hmm.
So they always taught us to treat everyone the same. And yet again, I know that is from a white perspective. So and there will be a slight view as if your parents said it to you, treat everyone the same, you'd have from a black perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a connection there. And the connection is that the message is the correct message. It's just that when we interpret things, it's how we interpret and making sure it doesn't turn into a negative thing. We have to turn it into a positive thing. And that's how my mum's always taught us.
Mm. So what about your dad?
I mean, I'm not saying my mum probably didn't say anything, and I've never heard her. My father, on the other hand, he never said it out loud.
Was it just kind of?
But he insinuated it.
Mm-hmm.
Not often, but he did. But he did insinuate it. Yeah.
Would you say like growing up, like were you aware of your white race and that offered you like certain like privileges, and were you aware in the different treatment people would receive for not being white?
I I not when I was young. I wasn't really aware of white privilege because I came from a village which
Mm-hmm.
was predominantly white, of probably about 2,000 people. I think the only family which weren't white were an Indian family who went to our school. The school I went to did have other towns, kids from other towns. So there was one black guy who's in our football team. He was a very good player. So sport helped him a lot. I don't remember racism going on, but I'm sure it did go on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I would have been blind to that. I
Well,
think
like
by not realizing it's going on. Not so it didn't
yeah,
happen,
yeah,
but yeah,
you could even participate in racism and not even knowing that it was racism.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
like name calling or thinking that these non-white people are in some way, shape, or form like inferior to you, because that's
yeah,
this is not your own thinking. This is just in all areas of in all areas of activity. This is the kind of stuff you're exposed to. Like when you watch TV, you're
mm.
more times than not watching like non-white people be harmed by
Oh
other
yeah, yeah,
non-white
yeah, yeah,
people
definitely,
or being
definitely,
saved by white people. So this is
yeah.
why. Yeah, so this is so yeah. As you can see, I have these conversations because I want to promote this sort of awareness, and I hope to give people the
It's good.
tools to like talk. And I hope that you start talking to your friends about, hey, racism, white supremacy, that's actually like the biggest problem in the world. It's not sexism, it's not climate change, it's not drugs, it's actually racism, white supremacy. That's
Well, if you don't have the people, like you said, you can't fix the problem.
yeah.
You
So
know,
like you can't, and I believe that nothing will ever change unless there's like at least a massive like awareness of like
yeah.
racism, white supremacy and how it works, and so I wonder if I have any of the. Hmm? Oh yeah, you got this. Is my partner's here. She wants to ask you a question too.
So, hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
Meet you. Um,
Likewise.
I was just wondering, like, what your thoughts are on the systems of racism and white supremacy, especially if you live in the UK, which gained a lot of its wealth from colonialism.
Oh God,
And
yeah. Yeah.
so I'm wondering, how do you feel like those economic systems have persisted to this day? And do you feel like well, I think racism is more than just, I feel like the interactions that your mom and your dad have are like the trickle down effects of the larger systems, the
Yeah.
economic systems, entertainment systems, the religious systems, the politics
Yeah.
that
Because they were
produce.
a benefit from it. That's why. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was wondering more of your thoughts on like the systems of racism and
Well,
white
I,
supremacy.
I think without a shadow of a doubt, I think a fool would only say we haven't benefited from the slave trade in this country. You only have to go up to Liverpool and see the Liver building where that was one of the major slave imports into the UK. And just the history with it. So absolutely, and I'm a big believer in removing absolutely everything which celebrates persecution, racism, torture, anything. And all these monuments need to go. All the buildings need to be renamed. And people will argue, oh well, this guy did so much for this place, 3, 4, 500 years ago. But yeah, but the problem is it was done for white people. It may be the institutions you have now, but it was on the back of that. And the way that history is written needs to change. It needs to be a lot clearer as well. To make us understand, and that goes across the whole world. I mean, we can even say, and I'm talking about a British thing now. You can talk about things we did in India, the American wars, even, prior to being kicked out, loads of stuff. I mean, the Brits done so much bad shit.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
such a small country, and it wasn't, and I should really say England. I shouldn't say the Brits, because it was England running the show. Not Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland didn't have a chance. They didn't have an option to get out. They all their people used to be dragged into this as well, and it was England being run out of the government in London. So it's an English thing. It's not a British thing. When people talk about the British Empire, it's really an English empire, and I think people forget that.
So
You know, that's slightly twisted with history, I think. Sorry.
There you go.
do you feel like the empire still exists within today? And do
Oh
you
God,
feel
yeah.
like people who immigrate are now in some way colonial subjects within like the UK?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just because we've come on 4, 5, whatever 100 years, it's still there. It's ingrained in our system, and it's ingrained in who we are. You know, we are a product of hundreds of years of this build-up.
Yeah,
Basically, you can't get away from. You can't get
okay.
away from it.
Yeah. Well, like 1,000 centuries of indoctrination into
Yeah.
white ideology, and
Well, I think that's why a lot of people find this topic uncomfortable
yeah,
because
it's supposed to be what it's supposed to
they
be.
feel that they don't feel they're in control of what they are, and that they don't see they're benefited from stuff because they can't be bothered to read the history and they're not interested. Sadly, because you need to know where you come from to know where you're going to go at the end of the day. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, you know, I love history. It's only recently I've been looking a lot of the American history. I love the British history and how we are, and you know, so it's ingrained in us. But I mean, that's a good thing in a way. I mean, I always look at the positives. That's a good thing in a way, and especially how connected we are nowadays. I mean, look at us. You're on the west side. I'm over in the UK, and
Yeah, but we're talking because of
it's good to
racism.
engage.
We're not
Yeah, it's good
talking
to,
because there's peace in the world. We're talking because of this chaos everywhere. You know.
yeah, but that's the important thing. That's what we have to do. We have to talk it and engage each other and send the right consistent messages around our individual countries that this ain't okay, and we have to change in order to be more connected, be more prosperous, be more of a community, be more everything.
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole point of this.
So, I recently discovered this theory called the theory of incapability, which is the belief that white people are incapable of seeing non-white people, especially black people, as nothing more than niggers. And this would be attributed to the reality that when white people first interacted with black people, they enslaved them and they made them into subhuman creatures. So how would you feel about this theory? Would you say that you can see that as being plausible or possible?
So you broke up slightly. Say it again. Say it again. I heard the last bit. What was the first bit?
Do you think this is possible? Well, do you want me to say the whole theory again?
Yeah, go on, say again, just to make sure I heard
Okay, yeah.
correctly.
So the theory of incapability is that white people are incapable of seeing non-white people, especially black people, as anything more than a nigger, which is like a subhuman entity, a non-human creature.
Right, gotcha.
So, and this would be attributed to the reality that when white people contacted non-white people, they subjugated them, enslaved them, and made them into a subhuman class.
Yeah.
So how did you?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. I totally agree with that statement, to be perfectly honest, because I think even nowadays, if did you say all white people? Do I think all white people, or?
Yeah, I would say all white people. All white people.
I mean, I personally wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's not how my brain works. But yes, I mean, I absolutely. There are certainly a lot of instances, you know, and again, I don't think a lot of people would admit to it, that they will look at, you know, a lot of races as second-class citizens, as that they deserve less than what they do, and so on and so forth. Again, that goes back to, I think, this being ingrained in our society for a long time.
Yeah,
I
I totally agree, but I only came across this theory yesterday. Only yesterday I learned about this theory.
I'm sure I've heard of that. I'm sure it rings a bell. The name of it rings a bell. But it's an interesting thought, to be honest, because again, I think a lot of people are, and I think this comes down to circumstances or situations. So, for example, what I mean is, I think when you're pushed to your limits as a human being, then that's when the true you comes out. And I think a lot of white people would probably deny they were like that until they were pushed. The right circumstance happened where they would look at the situation and then go, he's worth less than me, or she's worth less than me because of their color.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, because it is ingrained and it's buried for a lot of people, even though it's there. You know, it's not to encourage drinking, but you know, when people get drunk, that it's like a truth serum. People tell you what's really on their mind.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think when people are put under pressure, and you know, they then react to that situation. So I do believe that. Yeah, I do believe it's there. I think it's naive to think that, you know, it doesn't exist at all. You know, I definitely think it's there.
yeah. That's a really good answer, actually. What do you think you can do as an individual to replace white supremacy with a system of justice?
Well, I think certainly this needs to start from very low level government, certainly through education as well, through the schools. It's very hard to control people at home, you know, individual families, as we see in, you know, some of the crazy southern states, the way some of those people are. There's a Jacksonville and all the horrible things happened down there, was it, a couple of years ago?
I would say horrible things happen everywhere because of white supremacy.
Well, yeah. But you know, so I lost my train of thought. I was thinking of that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Beg your pardon. Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time again?
I said, what do you think you can do as an individual?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry. So, beg your pardon. So, yeah. I mean, certainly, me personally, or society we live in, or both.
No, right now, like this current society, this current system we live in, which is
I
like,
see. Well, yeah. So, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, the schools need to change for a start. Okay, you need equality across the board when it comes to local government and senior government. Okay, certainly the institutional racism that goes in this country, whether it be the police force, the healthcare system, that again, there needs to be equality. And a lot of the problem is what is being taught to people. And in some of these areas, it is predominantly white. Our NHS is very mixed, but racism is tolerant. It is tolerated, not by the workers who are abused by it, but it's not considered a problem.
Can you expand on how you would say NHS, like, can you explain that?
In the NHS?
Yeah, like how do you think they practice racism?
You know the NHS, don't you? Who they are?
Yeah. I know of them.
Yeah, so, well, no, they don't practice. I think they tolerated the management, middle management, senior management in our health service. Basically, we have a large proportion of nurses and doctors who either come from overseas and work in our country, or were born and bred here and have lived here for generations, whose forefathers didn't come from this country, from India, from the Philippines, parts of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. And they are subjected to some horrible racism that the actual managers do not deal with. I mean, you can look at the stuff on YouTube, seriously. And there's even stories about it. And I think the BBC or Channel 4 or someone did a program about it. And the abuse that they get for trying to help people. So, you know, that comes from your management, and there's a broken system there where you are more willing to treat someone's minor injury but suffer the abuse, because you're prepared to accept help from someone you are verbally abusing because of their color.
Oh, so you're talking about the NHS people get?
Yeah, the workers.
They sustain racist attacks, terrorist attacks.
That's it. And the management don't deal with it at all in a lot of cases. And it's even worse when you start to move away from London, where minority groups do drop, obviously, in numbers, because it's predominantly around Birmingham and London, you know, the main hubs, you know, which are very multicultural. So, but you go further north, and you get even less support from your managers, because again, the majority, it starts to become more white.
Yeah,
again.
That's really terrible.
And this is all institutional racism. I mean, it goes in the police forces, but you know, of course it bloody does. We see it in the news all the time in both countries.
Yeah.
You know, our education system is history pretty much built on teaching children about our colonial days, when you should be teaching them about people who should inspire you, not somebody who's going to kill you.
Yeah.
So it goes. So when you said Howard, I mean, it goes across the whole board. I mean, like I say, you can't change individual families who control their kids. You know, it's not the kids' fault; it's the parents' fault. You know, they're the ones that give you the education.
I agree. It's the parents' fault, and it's the parents' fault. And Well, yeah, it's definitely parents' fault. Like under the system of white supremacy, only white men are allowed to be fathers. Everyone else, every non-white person is a son or daughter of white supremacists. So if I were to ever have a child, I wouldn't call them my daughter or son. I would call them my offspring because I'm aware that I don't have any power or authority over anyone or anything because I am not a white supremacist and nor do I have that power. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's just something that I thought went really well with what you said. Um,
Cool.
but I don't think you answered the question. What do you think you can do as an individual,
Oh, sorry.
small scale, to help counter fight racism and white supremacy?
Do you know what? And I think that's a very good question, because I think at the moment, although I watch what's going on, you know, and I do speak up, I don't really, and whether it's an excuse or not, but you know, I think I'm so involved in what I'm doing in my own life. You know, I run a girls' football team, an under-16s team, or soccer team, as you call it. They're doing really well. They want to start the season again, and I'm sort of, you know, involved in my partner's life, and all our kids get on well. So I should maybe stop and think about how I can change things. And I belong to certain forums, and I try and promote equal opportunities, and you know, all the stories, you know, the great stories that are online and the horrible stories online that show injustice. And I try and promote that as much, and you know, when I put stuff on Facebook or whatever else, you know, share it on WhatsApp with friends and that. And certainly my own groups, our discussions are quite open, and I mean, a really good interest one. I mean, I had two interesting conversations. One was I caught up with two of my friends, Danny and Tony, who I haven't seen for quite some time. Went to university with them, and I said, Danny's parents are originally from Ghana, and Tony actually was born in Uganda. And we both, you know, went to university together. We used to go out party and blah blah blah. Now, Danny was of the opinion that he disagreed with Black Lives Matter, and I couldn't understand why. And he said, "Well, it's getting just a bit more than just political." And he's a teacher as well now, interestingly.
Yeah.
And then that surprised me. And then we chatted about it, and I kind of thought, okay, well, it's up to you. And Tony took his son up to Trafalgar Square in London when it first started as well. So yeah, they kind of had different views of it. And then the other side of it was, and this is interesting. You'll find this interesting. As I said, I coach a group of under 16-year-old girls, 18 of them. Me and another guy. He's got two of his daughters are in the team. Now, I was waiting for him to turn up, and two of the girls said to me, "Oh, what do you think, Peter, about Black Lives Matter?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean exactly?" And she said, "Well, do you not think it's going on a little bit now?" and also, it's not about just Black Lives Matter. It's about all lives. Now, I know who's talking there. Her mum and dad are talking there, not her.
Yeah.
And I thought, look, do you know what? This is football. I'm not going to get into it now because we need to do this. And you know, I wasn't going to stand there and start educating her at that particular point. But it was interesting to know where this stuff comes from. And like, you know, as you said, you know, when we talk about, you know, white supremacists and casual racism, I was earlier, this is the sort of stuff these kids start to learn at home, you know. And it's funny because Lee, the manager, his two children, the twins, her mum is half Indian, Malaysian Indian. So it's interesting that, you know, we work with people, or we work with their children, but behind the scenes they are racist, you know, and they've got racist views, but they wouldn't look at it that way. They can't see it. You know, the guys that say all lives matters or blue lives matters, they don't understand what the purpose is. You know, they've gone beyond. They've gone into the fear mode. Oh no, the black people are going to take over the world. You know, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And it's just nuts. You know, and that comes through fear, and that comes through being a white supremacist. Because if you're fearful of another race, you've got a problem for an irrational reason. And that's why you might bend the knee, because you're in solidarity. It doesn't mean you're saying sorry. It means you're showing empathy towards someone else for something that you probably would never experience. Thank God. The least you can do is have a bit of empathy.
Yeah. And yeah,
You know?
I would say to you, whenever you're prompted with like any opportunity to call out white supremacy and racism, and you know, help still any person and a path
Definitely.
towards like education or surrounding that, you should do that, because
Yeah, definitely.
like we're all we're all on this planet to solve problems, and the biggest problem is racism, white supremacy. I think, unless you're, if you benefit from it and you don't mind benefiting from it, then by all means. So what's the thing? And you said those girls, the large majority of them are they white, non-white?
Yeah, well, in our team, they're all white,
Oh,
bar two of them, which are mixed race. Yeah,
okay.
quarter Indian, the quarter white sort of thing. But I mean, also, my family, as you know, my family, so they know they've met my son Leon,
Mm-hmm.
who actually looks more Spanish, funny enough, but yeah, he's half Thai. And my daughter as well. And also, I took along. We did a park run the other day on Sunday with the girls, and I took my two stepchildren, two boys, pardon me. So Neo, who's the same age as Leon, they're both 16, and Ryan, who's 13, and they look Chinese. They are Hong Kong Chinese English. So we've got a mixture. So again, it's interesting that these people will have this casual racism but deny they're racist. They will accept certain people when it's on their terms, when it sits their comfort zone. Do you understand? One minute, one racism.
I agree 100%. And you mentioned that you have a non-white partner, right?
My partner.
Yeah.
I've let you into a secret. This can go on YouTube. I've never had a white partner.
Oh wow, interesting.
My first girlfriend, she originally was. No.
That's very interesting because, due to the system of white supremacy, the power dynamic between white and non-white people is by default unbalanced.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't I think it's detrimental for white people to date non-white people for that non-white person. Yes, you get perks and whatnot, but if you under the system of white supremacy, the power dynamic is not fair. Therefore, and I can break it down even further by introducing to you the idea that under the system of white supremacy, everyone who is not white is treated like a child. Like where we live is controlled, where we can go is controlled, what we can do is controlled. So it's, I would say that a non-white person dating a white person is very similar to an adult dating a child under the system of white supremacy. You don't have to agree with this, but this is what I think. But I would like to hear your thoughts on what I just said. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I've heard of that. I mean, I would look at myself and say, well, no, I'm not like. And I'll give you an example. I mean, Margaret, okay, my first girlfriend, actually serious girlfriend. She originally came from St. Lucia, and she was sent over to the UK as a naughty little girl, so she had to stay with her nan over here. And she actually chased me. She chased me at college. So I was quite a shy guy. I was a really shy guy actually. Mm-hmm. And then kind of off the back of that, I was on a bit of a rebound. I had my heart broken. It was my fault. I got a bit, into it. She was still young. We was 18, 19 sort of thing, and I thought that was, the start of the end of the world for me, And then I kind of done a bit of a stalker thing, and I thought I wanted to do the same stuff as she was doing. And I heard she was going off to Australia traveling. I wanted to do that. So my sister and her boyfriend were going, and that's when I kind of fell in love with my ex-wife, who was from Thailand. So that was 20 odd years ago. So I think I was more looking for love than maybe looking, and whether it's subconscious or not, but I was more looking for love, I think, or someone to love me than I actually maybe looking for someone to act out maybe that white supremacy kind of situation that you're describing.
Oh, I have no clue. I have no clue. I'm just.
That's really interesting, though. I think that's really. Because I think there might be some. I think, look, I think again where this is ingrained in our culture, and whether you look at,
like we have right here, all 9 areas, including sex, and sex is one of the most important aspects of, human activity.
You just read my mind. I was going to talk about pornography, and if you look at pornography when it comes to Asians, Mexicans, black women, it's normally in those dominant, submissive kind of.
You're totally correct.
So yeah.
That's.
Or so I read.
You're correct. I am positive. Jeez. Um, so do you see a end to white supremacy coming anytime soon?
No.
No. Why
So,
do you why do you
sorry, was I a bit slow in my response then?
no you weren't. Great, it's very respectable answer. So
Because I think we've had hundreds of years, hundreds of years. Well, to be honest, I know we talk about a defined time in American history, 400 years or so, but I mean, this hasn't been going on for thousands of years. This isn't, this is a long time, which is ingrained in who we are.
mm-hmm.
The Vikings were doing it. The Arabs were doing it. Different Arabian countries. Most of Europe were doing it. I'm not saying it. I'm not deflecting any kind of justification as to what white people or English,
Mm-hmm.
empire did. But it's ingrained in Western society, whether we like it or not. And that's why I don't think it's quick to change. I'm optimistic we can change it. We can make progress, absolutely, but I don't think we'll ever change it in our lifetime. Which is why we have to educate our children. That's why we've got to try and change the system, and change how we do things, and change how we protest, and change how we, get things fixed, basically. Because the guys at the top can't fix this because they don't want to.
Yeah, of course they don't want to. Do you talk about racism to your non-white children?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
how do you talk
Like from a young age, I spoke to Keanu and Leon when they first came to the UK, because they were born in Thailand, and then they came here when Keanu was 7 and Leon was 5, and they couldn't speak a word of English when they first came here. But as they got older, I started to educate them, and I said the importance, because we do live in a white middle class area, yeah. Although there is a population of black kids and a population of Indian kids and Chinese, it is still a white area, and that's when casual racism is hidden. So sadly, I expect it. Now, as a white person, I've got nothing to worry about, but my kids are mixed race, so I have to educate them. I said, look, if you get this, you need to tell someone about it. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to deal with it in the proper way, depending on the situation. Certainly, if you get it at school, you need to deal with it. And I always said, well, violence is only acceptable in my book if you are in a corner, and that is the only way you can get out. But you need to be smart how you talk about it, and you need to be smart how you deal about it, but make sure it gets dealt with. With my stepchildren, Neo, Ryan, and Chloe. Again, we've talked about the same sort of stuff because they're all about the same age. And Neo, someone said, oh yeah, in the past people will call me like a chinky.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I'll just laugh it. I said, yeah, but you should do something about it, because laughing about it, although it shows you're not bothered, it also means it's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to do something about it, because it's not right, So yeah, we have quite an open relationship, all of us. It's really good. It's lovely.
So when you were talking to your children, were you using like the term racism?
Was I calling it racism?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, there's no point talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not going to call it what it is, don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. Call it what it is. It is what it is. It's racism.
Because
and
a lot of white parents do not talk about racism. Even
I know, and that's so
white
strange.
Parents with non-white children. Yeah.
I don't get it. Mm-hmm. Well, I get it because they're uncomfortable, because it is an uncomfortable situation for them, because they're threatened by it.
Yeah. And there's no one's fault but the people who practice white supremacy and the white supremacists. So
yeah,
there are many people have been harmed, but the people who should be blamed always are the white supremacists.
Yep.
So I see myself under the system of white supremacy, like as a victim, because I'm subject to the system. Would you see your children in the same way because they are non-white, because they have non-white blood in them, therefore under the system are considered non-white?
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because my partner Camila, she was the one that said, right, my children have got 2 names. They've got their nicknames. Their nickname is Kiana, from a daughter, and Leon from a son. But their real names, they've got Thai names. Her name is Maysiapon, and Leon's real name is Wachilawit. Now, I wouldn't encourage them to write those names on any resume, right?
Yeah.
Because I know some dick in an office will just chuck it in the bin. So I've got to play the game a bit. I've got to be a bit smart.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah, you're aware
and that goes with their education.
Yeah. Oh, tragic society we live in.
It's one of the reasons why a lot of Chinese people change their names. I mean, yes, some of them are Christian, but they do change it to Westernize it to fit in. My great-great-grandfather did with our surname, which my surname is German, Glessinger, but it used to be Gleisinger. So they Westernized it to try and fit in because of the racism in that society they were in. Because people wouldn't accept them otherwise. It's like, we're going to make you the way you should be.
Yeah, this kind of.
Then we'll accept you, and that is part ingrained what we've been talking about. Absolutely, yeah.
So, we talked about. I asked you that already. So, moving forward, do you think you're going to be more proactive about having these kind of conversations, or when you see racism, white supremacy in action, will you be like, hey? Would you be more comfortable to call it out?
No, it doesn't bother me. Yeah, I'm a big guy. I kind of use that, not leverage, not in an aggressive way, but sometimes people, and I do call it out because you can't walk past stuff, and you can't ignore stuff, and yet say you still champion stuff.
Yeah.
Champion the cause. You can't turn a blind eye and pick and choose when it suits you. You either do it or you don't do it. And I think for me, it's as black and white as that. It's a simple,
Do you still?
Because look, I mean, another thing as well. I mean, my niece and nephews their father, their grandparents were from Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. So again, we've got the Caribbean in our family as well. So we are a very mixed family. So I have to call it out. If it's an Asian thing, someone's saying something racist. If it's a black thing, I've got both ears on this. I'm right in the middle of it.
Yeah, and also as a white man, you have the most power out of most people.
Absolutely.
So you have
absolutely
power for that.
I've got a soundboard. People listen generally more to white people than they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sadly, but, yeah.
Well, Peter. Unless my partner has more questions, I think this has been a very brilliant conversation.
I said you enjoy it, didn't I? I didn't let you down.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly enjoy hearing from a positive white person who was not a practicing white supremacist, as far as I can tell. So,
well, it's good because do you know what? That's really important. Not for my ego that you're saying that, but it's good because that is a gauge. That's a bit of an audit for me. Yeah, you've just done a nice little audit to say actually you're on the right track, sort of thing. I can't tell you I'm doing the right thing as a white person. I can only hear how it affects my opinion affects somebody. And if it's a black person, an Asian person, whatever, then that's the feedback I need to be sorting. I shouldn't be getting feedback from a white person or myself, because then that's not impartial.
Yeah. I have a question.
Oh yeah, my partner.
Okay, so how do you feel about reparations and like massive wealth distribution from I think it goes beyond just like listening and having conversations. Has to be a massive change in who has allocations to resources.
No, I agree with that, certainly, and I think that there's enough money out there that shouldn't be out there that needs to go in the right areas to. And some people think, right, you're basically saying sorry by paying somebody off, because that's how a lot of white people would think. And why should we pay it? Because it's got nothing to do with us directly. But that's not the point. The point is that time doesn't make things disappear. It's still there.
Yeah.
Just because it's 400 years or 300 years or whatever, it doesn't mean that that money shouldn't be moved elsewhere, because they can trace a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. And also, white slave owners got reparations, so it makes perfect sense. Like,
exactly,
your government up until last year was paying reparations to white slave people who were from. So
I did not know that.
So white ancestors from slave owners. So
it's crazy, isn't it? Crazy. So yeah, no, I do believe in it, and something, and there needs to be more done about that. You know, if you look in Australia, you know, they've done stuff out there, you know, where they've had to give out Aboriginal money to compensation stuff, and I think with the Native American Indians they have, but this is bigger than that, you know. And I know thousands of American Indians died, you know, through, you know,
interacting with white people.
yeah. But you know, this you can't. No, something just needs to be done, basically. Yeah. All right. So no, I definitely agree. I think. See, a lot of people are really uncomfortable with that, and I don't know why. Because for fuck's sake, it's only money. It's not like
Well,
you
I
know.
feel like it's more than just money. I feel
No,
like
no. Sorry, hang on. No. What I meant from an English person, a white person's perspective. I didn't mean from a black person's perspective. Beg your pardon.
no, I mean like we should get more than, well, not we, but like black people should get more than just money.
Well, assets, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm talking the core, because that stuff can be used to then fix problems in communities where equality can then be brought in. That's what I meant. I didn't want to. It sounded like.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But you know, from a white perspective, it's like, well, it's not your money in the first place. It doesn't matter if you're taking the money. I mean, if you're really worried about losing money, maybe the government shouldn't be spending. You know, I mean, the British government spent 45 billion on weapons last year. You know, Jeff Bezos is worth what, $151 billion. You know, Beirut has just had a huge explosion. You know, Jeff could just pick $3 billion out of his pocket and go, there you go, guys, fix the problem. You know, I know it's not as easy as that, but the problem is there's enough money around to help rebuild things, help build relationships, help build communities, help build in ways we think. Yes, there will always be right-wing people and there will always be racist people, but there will eventually be more of us who think this way, you know, and that's where you have to keep trying, you know, that's where you have to keep going.
Actually, I agree with most of what you said. I don't agree that there's more of us than there are racist people, because I think
no, there will be. And I don't mean in our generation. I mean, if we keep working and we keep changing people's minds, then hopefully, I mean, it won't be anytime soon, no. And I'll never see it in my time.
Well,
definitely not.
That's another thing I'm wondering. Like, what are your thoughts of the future of the UK? Like, you guys have pretty right-wing like government right now, and there's a lot of anti-immigration sentiment.
Yeah, I've put quite a lot of posts, and I've argued with quite a few. I don't often talk much on Facebook, so I think maybe it was fate tonight that we chatted. But you know, I read some of the crap people right now, inhumane. You know, people go, oh yeah, all lives matter, but yet you don't want these people coming into the country, and it's like our country's bulging at the seams. I'm like, well, where's it bulging? Show me the information it's bulging. In fact, if you look at our stats, there was 131,000 people that left the UK last year and went to Spain and Italy and other places around the world. We don't have 131,000 immigrants come to the country. So, you know, it's I think just the inhumane way people are sometimes, it's just a bit disappointing. You know, and I think as long as we keep trying to fix things and change things, you know, and like I say, it's the people that have to change in order to fix the other problems.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, little by little, step by step. You know, I mean, I think the sad thing for me when I watch America, and I watch the stuff in the civil rights and Martin Luther King and, you know, stuff that Malcolm X did and all the other pastors and preachers, you know, that really push the civil rights movement. It's just heartbreaking when you see some of the shit that goes on. You know, look at the other day, and forgive me, I forgot the guy's name. Was it 2 days ago? Got shot in the back 7 times.
Yeah,
I mean,
in Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. Yeah.
I mean, how the fuck can that happen? And I guess that brings us full. It kind of brings us full circle. You know, to our engagement tonight, really, isn't it? Because you know, that shit does go on in the UK, absolutely. But I think, and I'm not defending police by any means here. And I've been to Australia, and they don't like getting their guns out. But it's not to say they wouldn't do it to a black person if they was in that situation. But I think I was trying to kind of think to myself, I feel sorry for guys in America, not just black, but everybody, because the gun culture, which breeds fear in the police force.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we don't have that in the UK. We don't have weapons here, and I feel safe here. Even though we do have knife crime, you know, but we don't have that irrational. I don't worry about criminals. I worry about the police being irrational in moments where they need to be rational, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, seriously.
You know?
Yeah.
And I really do feel for guys. And unfortunately, you've got a guy in power, which hopefully he's gone by November, who has just made it worse and has put more fear in communities that shouldn't be there. And the police are on high alert constantly. You know, straight away. You know, they pull a black guy over. You know, straight away the weapons out. I mean, I've seen so many YouTube videos where the guys going, "What? My hand? Why have you got your gun out? My hands on the steering wheel. I don't understand what the threat is." You know, and it's just that. That's the ingrainedness we were talking about earlier, where it's ingrained that fear that these people will do something irrational.
Yeah, and
The irrational person is the one with the fucking gun.
Do you believe that if you do not understand the system of white supremacy, how it works, the majority of things that you see and experience will confuse you in some capacity? Like,
Does it?
will confuse you?
I mean, does it cloud how I look at stuff, like how?
Or just you and also people in general?
I think this goes down to mental state, and I think you know, for example, if I think of myself compared to other normal white people, you know, with a bit of a casual racism, as I put it, I think they would be more susceptible to it than me. I mean, I put my hand on my heart and honestly say, I think sometimes we can all be prejudiced because of the way our brain works. Sometimes, you know, you get that moment where you have a suspicious thought because either the media has been telling you for the last 10 years that every Middle Eastern guy with a backpack's going to kill you and blow you up. And even though you don't believe that, and even though you know that's wrong, and even though you know that 99.9% of people from those parts of the world are lovely people, you still have that moment for 1 second that you have to then correct yourself.
I think if you hear it long enough, you'll start to believe it. And
well, you do. You start to become a product of your society, the environment you live in. And if it's been bombarding you constantly, you will pick up bits, but you've got to be strong enough to then correct yourself and not believe it. And then,
so then, like, in regards to the police, I agree with you that because the police in America have more weaponry, they're more of a threat to people. But I'm wondering, like, do you think that in general, the police are agents of white supremacy and like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our police force is institutionally racist, absolutely. Even though it's changed a lot with respect to, you know, and it is a quota. You know, they start to do reverse discrimination where they haven't got enough black people or Asian people in positions of power, so they just only interview those sort of people. So then that puts even more. You know, those racist people within the police force are just going to hate black people even more because now they're jumping them in the creek.
They're going to think affirmative action.
Yeah, they took my brother's spot or something.
So, that's a bit fucked up in a way. You know, that's a bit crazy. But yeah, no, definitely in this country, and that's because, you know, it's a broken system. It is a broken system, unfortunately, and you know, most of them will tilt towards prejudice when it comes to stereotyping people. I mean, in London, you know, it's the same. It's the same stat as in America. You know, the stop and searches in London. You know, is the percentage of black young men, teenagers, you know, under 25 who get stopped is far greater than white men, and that's a fact. You know, and you know, I was targeted years ago. I was going off to raid, and we had what they used to call the Ring of Steel, which was around the city of London to stop a lot of. We used to have quite a lot of bombings from the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. We had our own terrorism. You know, people are worried about Muslims. We had terrorism in our country a long time before that came to our country, which was a product of our own doing anyway.
Yeah.
You know, make the problem, then be scared of it. Yeah,
that's white supremacy right there.
I know exactly. That's why I've got my opinion, because I know it's wrong. I know I don't think like that. You know, I try and think of the whole circle and how it's all linked together, because it does all link together, and people think it's separate conversations. It does link together, and you just got to find the links to then progress that conversation and progress your education. But no, we were stopped. And we were searched because I had both, again, Danny and Tony in the car. I had Rush Power, whose parents was Indian, third generation. Jalil, who's third generation Pakistani, and they stopped and searched us for no reason and targeting us.
Yeah.
Because not
instilling fear.
non-white people got to search and make sure they're not doing non-white violent things.
Yeah.
Just
And it's just, I mean,
just make them
it's
fearful.
Yeah.
no, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. You know, it's crazy. I mean, what happened to investigating a crime, you know, either whilst it happened or after it happened, rather than just subjugating people for no reason at all, which then builds more resentment and then more fear. And then because you know, young black kids or young Asian kids are all on high alert when they go out because their parents say, look, be careful when you go out. Just, you know, don't go near loads of groups of people or be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And so they feel on edge. And then the policeman then see a black kid on edge who's on edge because of the policeman. And then it's just a vicious circle, you know. So then the policeman's more likely to stop the kid. What you doing, where you going. And then it's you know, it's crazy. It doesn't have to even start like that. And again, that's education. We're teaching our children to fear before something happens. And you could call it streetwise, but you wouldn't say that to a white kid. You know, you wouldn't say to a kid, oh, be careful about the racism today. Be careful of the police. No, but you wouldn't, would you?
Yeah.
So we have to say that to our children. And again, that's an example of white supremacy and about white privilege.
Yeah. I have another question. So last year, Britain Torrent, white supremacist terrorists, murdered 51 people in New Zealand. And a lot of them, very few media outlets described it as a white supremacist attack. And very few media outlets described him as a practicing white supremacist, when he himself and his manifesto is a self-professed white supremacist, and he claims there to be millions of people in white supremacist-related organizations. How do you feel about this?
Well, I would probably say yes, he was probably right. There are millions of people spread across the world. He was a white supremacist, like you say, he actively said about it. And it was reported in the UK media that he was a white supremacist. So we got that. Thirdly, though, which is interesting, not necessarily about the story, but how the story is reported and how white media or white-owned media, whether it be the Murdochs, which I don't particularly like, and one or two others, they report in a certain way that skews the story towards you, making you think a certain way. And we know that through propaganda anyway, but certainly from a racial perspective. And I'll give you a good example. The other day, there was a young girl who was assaulted. I think she was sexually assaulted. She was walking through a park at night. She's 16, about 10:30 in the evening. And a guy approached her. Now, interestingly, they described the guy. He was 6'3". He had short brown hair. He was wearing blue jeans and a black jacket. Oh, and he was white. Now, wouldn't you write the word white at the start?
Yeah. The headline
that is the best fucking description of anything else. He's a white guy.
If the headline was like, if it was a black guy, I would have said, "Black man, 6'3", assaults woman, assaults young girl."
Absolutely. So, and I nearly phoned the guy up and said to him, you know, I don't think you realise how you're representing this. You know, how you look at, and maybe, do you know what? I need to go back because that's what you're talking about. I should go back and actually correct this guy because he's a reporter and he's reporting to white Middle England. So yeah, that's a good example. You've jogged my memory in my own story. So that's my mission of guilt. There you go.
Do you have any questions for us? Like, or any like, I don't, did he ask me questions?
No, not really, but
not really. No, I mean, to be honest, I had a feeling that I needed to speak to you guys for some reason. I didn't know why, but I had a little feeling.
Well, like I know I'm put here to. This is my life's work, countering racist white supremacy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need a lot of interactions like this to accomplish this. So you know. And this is my first conversation with a white person.
Well, feel free to share the video and do what you want with it.
Oh yeah, I shall.
Just don't edit it. So
I'm not white media. I will not do that.
Yeah. No, feel free to keep engaging each other. Yeah, I mean, add us as friends, and
Yeah.
chat away and support each other. You share stuff, I'll share stuff, and you'll see what the sort of stuff I also share as well. I mean, I believe in equality and humanity, and there's some
Ending white
wonderful.
supremacy. Ending. I want to say I believe in. I want to say I believe in replacing white supremacy with a system of justice.
I do. I absolutely do.
Say it. Just say it. Just say it.
Oh, sorry. I believe in replacing white supremacists with a system of justice.
All right. Yeah.
Equality. There we go.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, Peter. I don't have any more questions. If you have any more comments, if not, you'll see this video on YouTube.
Post the link.
Yeah, have a splendid night. Tell your family I said hello, and
It was nice meeting
likewise.
yeah,
Yeah, likewise, guys.
I really appreciate our shared words today. I really do.
you. Yeah.
That was good. It was really interesting. It was enjoyable. Yeah.
Good night, Peter.
Take care, guys.
Kudos.